Bible study on Tuesday nights at a Starbucks in Winston-Salem on University, and what it's revealed to me is the ministry to the rising generation is going to have some serious challenges, and if we don't talk about the problems that are out there, and if we don't talk about the real issues at stake, we're not going to be better than what if we say that the current state of the church is so divided. And it's, if that's true, then they have to do a better job. And so then how are they going to do a better job? How are they going to exceed the effort, improve the effort, or how are they going to turn it around? And I frankly don't know the correct answer. I mean, we know that God has to do it. It's grace. It's all grace. But don't you think God is going to raise up people who are going to understand the problems? And the problems, as we oftentimes say, is that the rising generation doesn't understand commitment. And if you tell them to commit to study, if you tell them to commit to fellowship, you tell them to commit to being holy, every day seeking the Lord, being a distinct man or woman of God, to learn how to walk in love, to do the gospel, to be Christ, to walk about in a Christ-like way. And initially we can talk about with excitement about improving something or being better, like a church split, the church that splits off, we're going to do better than the one we left. Or a company starts a similar product, but they form their own company to compete with the company they were in. A son wants to maybe exceed the work of his father. There's this initial energy that people have, but is that enough? No, it's not enough. It's never enough. It's sustaining power. And if we want to study this and get something from it, from the Bible, and learn from history, we can simply look at the life of Saul and of David. We can look at the life of Saul and David. I've heard a lot of people say that in our time, the church, the one that's controlling the church, that generation, is the spirit of Saul. Well, there's been many spirits of Saul. What I think they're saying is that there is that same spirit, that same way. The spirit of Saul was the people desired a king. They desired a leader. They desired somebody that was good looking or super intelligent or had a lot of great ideas, good communicator. And they picked a man named Saul because he was tall, he was good looking, and he had that natural leadership quality. And the Lord gave him a king, but he warned them. He said, if you want this is what's going to happen. This king is going to tax you. He's going to take your sons and carry them into wars where they might die. It's not going to be as good as me being your king. It's not going to be as good as God taking care of you and you having direct communion with me through the priesthood of Moses and Aaron and these judges that he had raised up. Hearts are evil. They're wicked. And that we need God to intervene. But he gives him this king, and he was the choice of the people. He was Saul. Yet, over the course of time, it becomes evident in the life of Saul that he is not really able. He don't have the skills to be a man that can lead properly in a holy way the nation of Israel. And it gets to a point where God just ends his time. And look how it ends. Samuel chapter 15, Samuel said to Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint you as king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he set himself against him on the way while he was coming up from Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and utterly destroy all that he has, and do not spare him, but put to death both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. Why would God tell Israel to totally destroy Amalek? They were in the southern end of Israel, like he said, going from the wilderness up toward Judah, up toward Jerusalem, people that owned that territory. And they did not allow the Israelites to pass through. It made them go around and go toward the way of Edom. And so in this process, the Lord hated what they did. They didn't bless. If you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. Now the Lord is doing is taking vengeance on the Amalekites. And in taking vengeance on the Amalekites, you had to wipe them completely out, or there would be repercussion in the future. And he wanted that seed, that spirit, that way completely annihilated. Because that's what has to happen in our time. Until Babylon is completely destroyed, she'll always rise up again and under a new name and continue to deceive and intimidate and rule the nations with flowing in the way of Saul. Then Saul summoned the people and numbered them in Telem, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the valley. And Saul said to the Canaanites, Go, depart, and go down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they came up from Egypt. So the Canaanites departed from among the Amalekites. So Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as you go to Shur, which is east of Egypt. And he captured Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep, the oxen, and the fatlings, the lambs, and all that was good, and they were not willing to destroy them utterly. But everything despised and worthless. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me, and has not carried out my commands. And Samuel was distressed and cried out to the Lord all night. So what do you think was really in the Saul attitude here? He has a clear commandment. Destroy everything. It's simple. But he makes a decision somewhere along the way, possibly, seeing some valuable resources like sheep and oxen that he could use. And for whatever reason, he thinks, you know what, I can't kill this king. Maybe it's some kind of relationship with the guy. But it doesn't really matter. When God says do something, do it. And when God says wipe it out, don't emotionally measure it or try to understand it or try to interpret it. Just do it. That when the Lord anoints you to do something, do it. Don't analyze it. And Saul here was making decisions, as many of our leaders do, based on, well, you're a good person, or I'd really like to have that person stay in the church, so I don't think I'm going to preach that against what he's doing, because I'll lose him, and if he's a wealthy man, I'll lose him, and it'll hurt the church, it'll hurt the cause. It's the same spirit. A holy man is a holy man. He serves God. He doesn't serve man at all. There's a complete separation between the service of God and the service of man. And Saul still had fear of man. He still had fear of his people. And he still had a covetous heart in that he wanted things that God was going to supply some other way anyway. He didn't need those sheep. He didn't need that king to be spared. But notice Samuel's heart. Samuel anointed him. Samuel loved him. Samuel cared for him. He was his prophet. He was his, even in a way, his priest, because he prayed over him and he prayed over the nation. Samuel was a man of God from his youth, from being a small child, handed over by his mom, Hannah, to be service to Eli and to the worship of God in the house of the Lord. And Samuel here is petitioning the Lord all night long. Verse 12 says, And Samuel arose early in the morning to meet Saul, and it was told Samuel, saying, Saul has come to Carmel, Mount Carmel. And behold, he set up a monument for himself, then turned and proceeded on down to Gilgal. Okay, there's something significant there. As you know, later on in the history of the nation of Israel, in the northern tribes, that's where we are right now, in the northern section, in Mount Carmel, there's a big showdown between Elijah and the prophets of Baal and Asherah. And here, the Lord is purifying the people of worship of the gods of the Sidonians and the God Yahweh. Elijah says, choose this day whom you will serve. If it's the Lord and he wins this showdown, then serve the Lord. And if it's Baal, then serve Baal. But do not try to do both. And notice this is the same spirit in Saul. He had a desire to please the people and